Oh. Hi, Brains and Bodies here, and today I want to talk to you about the neuroscience of adrenaline junkies. So, let's get started. Throughout human history, we've been fascinated with the dangerous, the deadly, and quite frankly, the downright stupid. Our question is why? In order to answer this question, we really have to delve in to what it means to be human. Homo sapiens were the only of the early hominids to emigrate over the entire globe, which, as you can imagine, was a very risky endeavor. That being said, scientists characterize humans, for this reason, to be an intensity and novel-seeking species. Early humans also had to hunt in order to survive, which meant that if you took greater risks, you were often a more successful hunter. It is possible that risk-seeking behavior is ingrained within our DNA and fueled by the promise of reward. Our brain has a functional topography to it, meaning that different regions of the brain tend to specialize for different tasks. The emotional processing region of the brain is largely restricted within the limbic system. The limbic system includes structures such as the amygdala, the hippocampus, the mammillary bodies, the fornix, and a whole bunch of other structures most people don't take the time to remember. But we are not most people, and we are going to look at the structures within the following diagram. Of particular pertinence to our discussion is the structure known as the amygdala. The amygdala translates to the almond, which shows in addition to the renowned creativity of scientists and their ability to name structures, they also tend to skip lunch. The amygdala plays multiple roles within the brain, including decision-making, memory, and emotional reactions. Although the amygdala is primarily known for its role in fear processing, it also plays a really large role in appetitive and addictive behaviors. Important points we'll talk on later. The amygdala receives its primary input from the visual, somatosensory, and auditory cortices. These cortices are responsible for retrieving our main sensory information for sound, visuals, and our sense of our body and space. Once the amygdala receives its primary sensory information, it outputs it to the hypothalamus. And what does the hypothalamus do with this information, you ask? Well, let me tell you. Once the hypothalamus receives this information from the amygdala, it, in turn, leads to the production of hormones via the hypothalamic pituitary axis. Big complicated naming system, but essentially, through a chain of hormones from the hypothalamus to target tissues, they lead to the production of adrenaline and cortisol, hormones that we know for their role in the fight-or-flight response. Now, specifically, the hypothalamus releases hormones to the adrenal glands. Adrenal, again creative naming, these are the glands that are on top of the kidneys. They produce the adrenaline and cortisol that lead to increased heart rate, dilated pupils, and essentially fight-or-flight response. Now, it is for this reason that the amygdala is thought to pair the perception of threatening sensory stimuli with the actual fight-or-flight response directly. More recent research suggests that multiple pathways and brain regions are responsible for both the induction and the experience of fear. These regions are not only restricted to the amygdala and the hypothalamus, but also the brainstem, and again, the insula. With most addictions, we see signature neural patterns. First, we see the experience of large increases in limbic system dopamine within a region known as the nucleus accumbens. Now, dopamine is known as a neurotransmitter, primarily for its role in reward activity, but this occurs during the act itself. Afterwards, there exists a greater and greater preoccupation with the event, which is represented by an increase in activity within the prefrontal cortex. And lastly, we see the withdrawal or the negative affect following the event, which is shown by activity within the regions known as the amygdala and, oh, surprise, the insula. Now, with adrenaline junkies who have an addiction, we see very similar neural patterns. There exists a well-established correlation between high sensation-seeking behavior and drug use. It is possible that dopamine's role in novelty-seeking behavior explains this correlation. High sensation seekers have a tendency to try drugs earlier, to try more types of drugs, and to become addicted relative to their low sensation-seeking counterparts. High sensation-seeking individuals have a tendency to develop a sort of tolerance to activities. They take riskier and riskier activities in order to recreate that initial high. It is possible, for example, that high sensation seekers have a lower set point for fear extinction, which allows them to dampen down their physiological response to fear and enjoy those activities. In addition, it is possible that high sensation seekers are able to more effectively engage higher cognitive areas, such as the prefrontal cortex, in order to put fearful stimuli into context. When exposed to emotionally rich imagery in laboratory settings, distinct neural activity patterns exist between the adrenaline junkies and the rest of the population. Regardless of whether or not the pictures were pleasant, such as mild erotica, or unpleasant, such as snake poised to strike, across the board, high sensation seekers showed a very early, very strong activation in the insula. Now, this brain structure acts in part as a gateway between the visceral signals of the body and their initial interpretation within the brain. And it makes sense that this was highly active in high arousal states. Thus, an overactive approach system in high sensation seekers and a strongly active emotional inhibitory system in low sensation seekers may explain the diverse reactions we get to horror films and amusement parks across the population. Many people describe extreme athletes as adrenaline junkies, but perhaps their drive stems from something deeper, the experience itself. The outdoors presents a combination of novelty, unpredictability, and complexity, and these elements hold our attention very strongly in the same way risk does. Now, novelty means both danger and opportunity, and with exposure comes a loss of self-consciousness and a sense of time dilation. Fancy words for saying, you forget all of your worries. That primal sense of fear overwhelms your processing power so strongly that you can't focus on anything else besides the present. At the neurobiological level, we see striking differences between high sensation and low sensation seekers to the exact same stimuli that permeates our culture and our environment. But in the big picture, perhaps we're simply using different avenues to reach the same goal. Does the science answer all of our questions? Maybe not, but as more and more neuroscience research comes to light, I believe that we will redefine again and again what it means to survive and what it means to live. Thank you.